Golden State Media Concepts Baseball Podcast. We cover everything Major League, from spring training to the World Series. We've got your favorite club covered, from New York to Boston to LA. This is the Golden State Media Concepts Baseball Podcast.
And thank you for tuning in to the Golden State Media Concepts Baseball Podcast, where we discuss everything in the world of Major League Baseball. As always, Jeremiah.
And my name is Ben.
And we are back here again to pretty much give you a little mix of everything. We didn't get a chance to discuss the American League East, so we're going to do that today. Of course, we're going to discuss the United States winning its first ever World Baseball Classic Championship.
Merc.
And we're going to discuss our predictions to pretty much our favorites to win MVP, Cy Young, and probably some wild card teams. So
I'm saying Tim Tebow for Rookie of the Year now.
Tim Tebow.
I'm just gonna say
fall
it now.
Ball. In fall. I bet
bold prediction in single A.
By the way, before we I just want to point to something out. Did you see that little promotion that this minor league team had for whenever he comes to town in June? Like,
no, what is this?
If he strikes out at least 3 times, everyone in the crowd will get like a free Whopper or something.
Really? Wow,
yeah,
interesting.
I talked about like last week when you weren't here, but
interesting. I did not read that. I saw that Max Scherzer definitely dominated him, but
yeah, I like how they did the headline: Heisman winner versus Cy Young winner. I'm like, But Matt,
he's like, I don't like it.
Okay, yeah, I can tell where this is going. But anyways, enough about Mr. Timothy Tebow. We're going to talk about the American League East, and it's pretty top heavy. Just like how it was last year. You know, the Red Sox won with 93 wins. Then the Baltimore Orioles and Toronto Blue Jays both made the wild card, and they had the same record. And, you know, the Yankees, they finished with 84 wins, but I think they're going to be a lot more better this year. And, of course, the Rays finished out in last place at the bottom of the basement at 68 wins. So let's talk about the Boston Red Sox, you know. There is some rotation problems. You know, Rick Porcello is their opening day starter. David Price is going to start the season on the DL, but remember, this is a team that acquired Chris Sale this past offseason, so I think they're going to be okay. They have pretty much the same type of lineup as it did last year. I think they're going to have a lot more competition now, especially with the Yankees. I think the rivalry is going to be back this year. But, you know, when I just look at this team overall, you know, it's practically the same team. They added Mitch Moreland to round out first base because, you know, they needed someone at that position. And, you know, I think they're moving Hanley to full-time to DH now. You know, they got guys like Mookie Betts, who I think could be an MVP candidate. Dustin Pedroia is the rounds out. He pretty much the leadoff batter. I do think, you know, we might have a little bit of drop-off of production in Jackie Bradley Jr. He just came out to the scene. I do think he's going to be productive. But
no more, no 29-game hitting streaks this year?
That's hard to do.
I know, man. Think about it. The record's 56. He barely broke half, and he still eclipsed a great mark. You know what I mean? Like, he barely broke the halfway mark.
There's a reason why Joe DiMaggio, his record has standed for so long. It's because it's impossible to have a hit in baseball. But, you know, honestly, I think it's tough for me to pick the winner of this division because it's so competitive. But I do think with the addition of Chris Sale, I think it's going to help out a lot. And the Red Sox rotation, I think they might have the best rotation in this division. And for that reason, I'm going to have to go with the Red Sox to repeat as the AL East division champions again.
I agree with you. I think definitely with the hitting they had, I don't think they hit as well as last year. Ortiz had arguably his best season at 40 years old, which is really tough to do. I don't think they'll hit as well as they did last year, but they're still a firehouse. I mean, they're such a powerhouse. I mean, they can hit like the best of them. The pitching staff gets a lot better with the addition of Chris Sale. Porcello will probably have a down year. I mean, the guy was 22-3 last year, but he won so many games because he got so much run support. Hopefully, the big question for me is how is David Price going to do? Because he's going to start this season on the DL, so he's not going to be there right away. How can he get healthy and help this team? Because I think regular season, they'll get through that. I think they'll be in the postseason. But for them to be successful, they're going to have to be able to pitch. What happened to the Red Sox in the postseason? The Indians killed them because they just simply outpitched them. The Red Sox couldn't hit. So if the Red Sox can't pitch, then they're going to be in trouble come postseason time. And I think a lot of that stems on former Cy Young Award winner David Price. How healthy is that arm? How healthy is that elbow?
And if he does come back healthy, and this is going to be a really good top 3 rotation, especially if this team makes the playoffs, because they're going to make the playoffs. They're just way too talented to miss the playoffs. But yeah, I agree with you, Ben. It all depends on the armor of David Price, and they're going to need him when it's crunch time, especially late in the season. So I think the Red Sox are going to win the division based on their pitching. Well, let's move on to the other teams in this division. You know, the Baltimore Orioles. They finished, well, they were tied for second place with Toronto Blue Jays. And Baltimore, they look like they kind of have the same team again. You know, they got like Adam Jones, Manny Machado, Chris Davis, Mark Trumbo. We've seen them before. I do think they have the lineup to compete, just like the Red Sox. But the main question to me is their pitching again. They do have Zach Britton, who I think is you can make an argument he's the best closer in the league. He just
after last year
he just lights out. Like, he was a Cy Young candidate. The fact that he wasn't a candidate was baffling to me.
Yeah, he wasn't even a finalist.
It's like,
I don't agree with that.
Me neither. But there was starting rotation, you know, that involves Kevin Gausman, Dale Bundy, Wade Miley, Yabala Jimenez. Doesn't really scare a whole lot of people. Chris Tillman will start the year on the DL, so he's going to be missed the beginning of the year. Chris Tillman had a really great season, 2017. I do think they're going to... I'm not really too confident in their pitching. And for that, I think they will have a chance to compete for a wild card spot again. But I don't know if they can compete well enough to win the division.
I think the Orioles will have a down year, honestly. I mean, they kind of exceeded expectations last year, and especially that bullpen in Britain. No disrespect to Zach Britton, he's great, but you can't not blow a save for 2 seasons in a row. Like, that's just not going to happen. That's just not going to happen. So they're definitely going to lose some games that they won last year. Still a great lineup with Jones and Machado. They definitely scare people. And then you have Davis and some of the other guys to hit the home runs, but they're not going to do as well as last year in my eyes. I think other teams in the division are more improved, like Boston and New York, who we'll get to. So I think the Orioles will have a little bit of a down year.
Yeah, me too. I do think they'll be in contention late in the year, but I just don't think they have enough firepower to compete for a division title. And then the team that was tied for the second place in the AL East was the Toronto Blue Jays. Remember, they made the wild card too. They played Baltimore in that game. And, you know, this team on paper has a very great lineup. You know, you got guys like Troy Tulowitzki, Josh Donaldson, Jose Bautista, who came back as a free agent, by the way. He didn't have a really good market. You got a lot of power. They did lose Edwin Encarnacion, so he went to the Cleveland Indians. They added Kenrys Morales as their designated hitter. So the lineup looks like it can be just as productive. But the rotation, Aaron Sanchez, he had a really great breakout year. I think he had like one loss, until the midway point of the season. J.A. Happ really exceeded expectations last year. He came out of nowhere. Marcus Stroman, who was the winning pitcher in the World Baseball Classic, who had a no-hitter going in the 7th inning, by the way. So I do expect a really great year from him. You got Marco Estrada, who kind of resurrected his career a little bit. Then you got guys like Francisco Liriano, who I expect to be he's a pretty great pitcher in the 5th spot. So I do think this rotation could have potential to be better than Boston, but I just think Boston has so much firepower in the top 3 that I think they have the arms to compete for a division title. I think they're going to finish the second place, though. I think it's going to be between Boston, Toronto, and New York in this division.
Real quick, Jeremiah, we have some breaking news in the show. So, Yuris Familia, the Mets closer, has been suspended 15 games to start the season because of his October arrest for domestic violence.
Really?
So, start that off there. So, Mets will be out with Familia. 15 games, not much, out of 162. So, he's a closer. So, you're looking at, I don't know, maybe 7-8 appearances at the most, depending on how close games are for the Mets start the season. But just some breaking news there to start.
But man, Familia, he has had trouble. Just, I don't know what it is. He has to spend the entire year 2016. I don't know if he's ever going to play baseball. Well, he played baseball, but man, the Mets have to kind of cut him, right?
I don't think that's going to happen, man.
I
think he'll probably stay on board, but at least not for 15 games he won't be. But Back to the Blue Jays. I mean, it's going to be tough. They did bring in Morales to try and replicate what Encarnacion did, but he hit 39 home runs last year. I don't see Kendra Morales hitting that many. It's going to be tough. Batista, remember, will probably not start the season playing because he did get injured in the WBC for the Dominican Republic. So they will have to not have a big bat out there in left field to start the season off. Donaldson's an MVP candidate every year, so he's pretty steady. Tulowitzki had a little bit of a down year, but then when he went to Toronto, kind of worked his way up there a little bit there. So I think he'll be fine. The problem for me is the pitching. Sanchez had a great season last year. Can he replicate that? J. Happ had a great season last year. Can he replicate that? Remember, he did that before with Philly, and then he kind of just went on the downward decline there. So can he replicate his success from a couple seasons? I don't think so. I think Toronto has a down year as well. I think the team to really come up is the team we're going to talk about next year, Maya. That's the Yankees.
And that is the New York Yankees. And this team was exciting to play part of year. Of course, we're talking about the Baby Bombers. We had a whole segment on them in August. And, of course, when we talk about the Baby Bombers, we're talking about Gary Sanchez, who had a great streak of, 100 home runs in 15 games. Greg Bird, who is going to be the starting first baseman, taking over Mark Teixeira, who retired last year. And then, got Aaron Judge, who absolutely smoked a home run in this first game last season. So this is one of the teams that's, normally the Yankees are one of the teams I really dislike, growing up a Giants fan. Or I think if you grow up any type of baseball fan and you're not a Yankees fan, you're probably pretty much going to hate the Yankees. But honestly, I can't say that this year. I honestly am excited to watch this team. This is the first time I ever said in my life that the Yankees are going to be a team to watch this year. And I'm actually looking forward to watching some of their games. I think they're going to be really fun. They're going to hit a lot of home runs. The main problem for me, though, is the pitching. The Masahiro Tanaka, if he can stay healthy, I don't think will happen. That's what I said. If he can stay healthy, he has potential to be. I know this might be a little bit of a stretch here, but I think he can win more than 15 games if he stays healthy. But outside of that, Michael Pineda, CC Sabathia hasn't been the same in a few years. Michael Pineda had a really great stretch at last season. I think he threw 16 strikes in one start. Luis Severino, he struggled when he first came into the majors, but I do think he can potentially bounce back. But honestly, though, I think the main thing to watch for this team is the lineup. You got guys like, you still got Brett Gardner and Jacoby Ellsbury 1 and 2. Then you got Gary Sanchez. They added Matt Holliday to be the DH. You got Greg Bird, starting Castro, Chase Headley, and you got Aaron Judge, and you got Ronald Torres as a shortstop there. So I think it's going to be a fun team to watch. I think, honestly, I want to say, I think they have enough talent to compete with Boston here.
I think it all comes down to the pitching because this is literally the same thing as the Cubs 2 years ago. Every guy in their lineup, with the exception of maybe Holiday, is like 12 years old. They're just barely getting out of their diapers. You know what I mean? Everybody is just so young. If these young guys can develop, the sky's the limit. Not to mention all the prospects they still have in the farm system.
Yeah, they have a top 10 farm system in the league now.
You know what I mean? Which you never see with the Yankees because they trade them all the way to get A-Rod. You know what I mean? So if they can develop all these young guys, they're going to be phenomenal. Yeah, and that's what it comes down to. It comes down to that and the pitching. Can it stay up? I don't think Tanaka can stay healthy because he has not proved that yet. CC Sabathia is probably the oldest player on this team. That's what it comes down to, that and the pitching.
Yeah, so I do think this line is going to be something to watch. And just to round out the American League East here, Tampa Bay Rays. This was the worst team in this division, and I kind of think they're going to be headed that way again. This rotation, I was really disappointed. Chris Archer started out the year very slow. I think he's going to have a bounce back year. Jake Odorizzi, he's always he can strike out a lot of batters, but he always allows a lot of runs, so he's always inconsistent. Alex Cobb, I think he was coming back from a Tommy John injury, so he's going to take a while to kind of get back to who he was before. Matt Andres, he had a couple of starts last year, and I just think he could potentially be a really good fourth spot. But the guy I'm really excited about on this rotation is Blake Snell, who's going to start off the year as the fifth starter. And don't forget, they also added Jose De Leon, who was one of the Dodgers' top prospects, so he can be in the rotation by the end of the year. So there's a lot of potential in this Tampa Bay Rays pitching rotation, but all these guys are young. I think they're in their mid-20s. I think most of them are, by the way. So honestly, if this rotation can play to their potential, I think they can be a surprise team, a breakout team, but they're not going to score a lot of runs. That's the thing about this squad. They're not going to score a lot of runs. They do have some home run power. They got Evan Longoria, no relation to Eva Longoria. No relation there. I said that name wrong. I don't know why I said it.
It's okay, buddy.
But they got Corey Dickerson, who was a kind of a breakout candidate a couple years ago with the Rockies, but then he get traded to the Tampa Bay Rays. And, outside of that, there's really not a whole lot to get excited about. I just don't think they have enough firepower to score a lot of runs, so I think this pitching rotation is going to be very important for them to have success in 2017.
Quick side note, I just realized that the only difference between Eva Longoria and Evan Longoria is one letter, the letter N.
Exactly.
So
that's what I said. Evan Longoria, no relation to Eva Longoria.
So, I thought that was kind of clever. I just realized that now. I even know Evan Longoria has been in the league forever. So, but back to the Rays. They struggled last year. I think a lot of their success really led on Joe Madden as a manager. And since he left to go to Chicago, they kind of just been down in the tank. They literally get about 12 people to show up to their games every time at Tropicana Field. They don't get any real support. It sucks, but it is what it is. Maybe they'll surprise people because, after all, when you're least expected to do well is when you kind of surprise everyone. So possibly they do have some good leadership in Longoria and Brad Miller. Maybe he can hit some home runs from the second base position, but I don't really see much going on here.
Yeah, and that's why I said this rotation has a lot of potential, but this team will go as far as the rotation, and they just don't have a lot of talent to score runs outside Longoria and probably Corey Dickerson. Brad Miller did have a really good year, but outside of that, I just don't see this team having a lot of success scoring runs. All right, well, that concludes the American League East division. When we get back, we're going to discuss the World Baseball Classic and the United States winning its first ever WBC championship. So we're going to discuss that when we get back to the Guns to Me Concepts of Baseball podcast.
Are you looking for the very best NFL and college football podcast? Then check out the GSMC Football Podcast. Get the latest football news both on and off the field. From the NFL Draft to trades to the rumor mill to the NFL Combines, they got you covered. That's GSMCpodcast.com/football-podcast. Get updates on college rivalries, game day insights, and much, much more. It's football talk the way you want it. This show eats, sleeps, and breathes football. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
And welcome back to the Guns to Me Concepts Baseball podcast. And, the World Baseball Classic concluded last Wednesday night in the championship game between the United States and Puerto Rico. Did you get a chance to watch this game?
It wasn't much of a game. I did. The United States blew them out of the water. It was 8-0.
Yeah, I was at...
Marcus Stroman had a no-hitter going to the seventh inning during the game.
Yeah, I was actually watching the game at the Golden One Center during the Kings game, I think, versus the Milwaukee Bucks. So I went to the game.
Come on.
I went to the game, right?
You're watching a game within a game. Mind blown.
I was at the Sierra Nevada Draught House, which is absolutely great. The best part of the Golden One Center.
Oh yeah, the beer place is the best part.
It is. It's the greatest view in the whole entire arena. I certainly think so. But anyways, it's kind of like a bar within like a sports arena, and they have TVs there. Of course, they're showing the Kings game once going on, and then they had the World Baseball Classic, and I was like, oh, okay, I'm gonna see what they're doing. And man, my gosh, the United States just dominated this game. Marcus Stroman, who I mentioned earlier, had a no-hitter in going to the seventh. That's the best I've ever seen him pitch in a while. And, this team, they had star power, and they have home run power in this United States squad. And I talked about it on the show last week, and I picked the United States to win because when I looked at both of these teams, the United States just have a better lineup, hands down. They got potential to score more runs. They got guys that can knock it out of the park. And, man, we got home runs from Ian Kinsler. We have a lot of clutch hits from Andrew McCutchen, Brandon Crawford, Giancarlo Stanton, and Christian Yelich. So, this was a great squad for the USA. And this is the first time they've ever won the World Baseball Classic. First time ever.
It's the first time they even medaled.
Exactly.
To go out and win, that's phenomenal.
They never even gone that far.
No, they had never gotten into the medal, which is at least the third place game. So it was fantastic. You mentioned Kinsler with the home run, a couple of RBIs from Brandon Crawford, McCutchen, and it was even a game. And remember, the Puerto Ricans did defeat the Americans in that, I can say, that playoff round, that second round to advance into the semifinals. And it was actually their first loss of the whole entire tournament. So kind of a bad way to end there. Your first loss is in the title game. And I feel bad for Puerto Rico as well because back-to-back times in the WBC now, runners-up.
Yeah.
Like runners-up in 2013 against the Dominicans, runners-up this year against the Americans. But good for us, miracle. But you know what? Here's where I want to get into WBC, and here's where I want to sort of make this segment go, and where we'll kind of debate this. A lot of talk about the surprising success of the World Baseball Classic, because I was honestly surprised at how successful it was, because I felt like time frame wasn't really the best. You're right before the start of the Major League season. This ended last Wednesday. We have games starting this Sunday. So we have a week and a half before the regular season starts is when the WBC ends. So not necessarily the best time frame for me. If you started in January, you probably have a lot more people playing. But nevertheless, still successful. And I think that's because of the fun and entertainment side, which was really, really debated between a lot of the Latin American nations and even the Americans. I mean, I'm glad we won, but I'm kind of not on the side of people like Adam Jones and Ian Kinsler because they're talking about how it was kind of taking away from the game and they're like basically having too much fun in it, and that's not what it's all about, which I don't agree with.
Yeah, exactly. And I think the ratings for this were actually pretty good, actually.
They were I think
it was the highest baseball game.
This was the second most viewed baseball game, only behind Game 7 of the World Series.
Yeah, so it did really well, and I think it kind of helped because you got Major League Baseball players playing for America. And, yeah, a lot of managers, a lot of people don't want, the players to get away from spring training. But if you think about it, they're actually have a lot more better competition than they're facing in spring training, if you think about it. Because in spring training, you're not going to get a whole lot of at-bats when you're a star player. That's more like for fringe guys, more of the prospects. So I do think this was a way for guys to get ready for the season. When you're playing in a global tournament like this, you're going to face the best of the best in every country. Because, at Puerto Rico, you got guys like Yair Molina, Carlos Correa, Francisco Lindor, Javier Baez.
Even Carlos Beltran.
Those are pretty big names in baseball.
They're everyday starters.
Exactly. You're going against everyday starters for their respective teams. And I think this is the most memorable baseball classic I've ever remembered. I think this is for a couple of reasons. Because, one, USA, it was the first championship game they've ever won, and they probably the first they ever advanced. But you got guys that, you got guys like Giancarlo Stanton hitting out of Petco Park in, I think, one of the semifinals games, and everyone was just that crowd went wild during that game.
Definitely, it's definitely fun and exciting. I read that one thing, like the Puerto Ricans all dyed their hair blonde for it.
Yeah.
that
that's a tradition they do, though.
In Puerto Rico, you could go to a convenience store and you could not find bleach hair dye because everyone was replicating it back home because of the tournament. Like, that's definitely the fun and success. And this is what I think baseball can learn from this. Is we debated it on this show before. The whole element of fun and showing up your opposing players and everything. Use this as an example. This was the second most viewed game behind Game 7, which pretty big. I mean, Game 7 of the World Series, pretty big. Every other year, you're not going to have the Cubs and Indians with those certain stipulations, how long of droughts both of them had been in and everything. So you're not going to have a game viewed that high for a really long time in my eyes. If you had this game second, that means people were watching it for a reason. I'm sure there was a lot because the United States were in it, and I'm sure there's a lot because of the success and the fun of the tournament. Keep it that way. Major League Baseball. Do something. Listen to your audience. Listen to your customers. Get away from this old, developing, don't show anybody up style, and advance into this new, fun way of playing. Seriously, like, it's so much better for the game. It's not going to happen, but it'd be so much better and entertaining because I feel like baseball could be so much more popular than it is.
It can, and to an extent, I do agree with you. But I don't think it will ever happen.
Exactly, which
baseball,
sucks.
Baseball is one of those sports that is very traditional. Remember, this is a sport that's been implemented since I don't even know when. I don't know, say like 1800s.
Forever.
It's been around forever.
America's pastime. It's called that for a reason.
And yeah, it's called that for a reason. But I do think, baseball, they can make the game so much more entertaining, but I think they just don't want to kind of lose fans that love the traditional aspect of the sport, and I think that's the reason why it's always viewed as very long, very boring to more of a young millennial audience. And I love baseball. I love everything about it, and I'll be fine either way it goes. But as far as the entertainment side, I just don't think baseball sees itself as kind of like how's the best way I can say this? You know how the NFL, they're a brand, right?
Yes.
Major League Baseball, they're not really a brand, honestly. I think they view themselves more as a sport than an actual brand, unlike the NFL does.
Okay, so you think that means that they can't have fun?
I think they can, but I don't think Major League Baseball wants to go that route.
Man, it's so tough for me because it's literally split down the middle, almost. You know what I mean? It's like, what was, besides the World Series, the biggest storyline from last season? It was Odor and Batista fighting, right? And what caused that? Well, a bat flip caused that, which was fantastic.
Okay, like the fighting, that I didn't agree with.
I feel like when you and I debated it, I feel like that was good for the game.
No, I don't think so. I won't agree with you on that. That's not good for the game, man.
I feel like it was because
it's not.
For once on a national media, of course we're talking baseball here on this show because that's what we do. But on a national media, they were actually talking about baseball for a reason, not because it's playoff time. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but this is Major League Baseball. This isn't the NHL, Ben.
But I thought it was good. I thought it was great. Like, allow these players to show each other up. Like, the pitchers, the closers, they get a strikeout with runners on base and they scream and yell. How's that any different than me flipping my bat because I hit a home run off
I'm
you?
actually okay with the bat flip. Like, to me, that doesn't bother me at all. The only problem I had was the fighting part. I didn't like it at all. To me, fighting in any sport is bad for the game. The best thing I can come up with is the mouse at the palace in the NBA. That was terrible for the NBA.
But that included fans and everything.
I know, but I'm just wanting to use that as an example because that's probably the biggest fight in NBA history. That was the worst day in NBA, in my opinion. And then when you fast forward to the Major League Baseball, you had constant fights. Even Yoldarner Ventura, rest in peace, versus Manny Machado happened a lot last year. Then you got Jose Batista and Rougned Odor. I just don't like it, man. I just don't want to see that. This is a game I think that, has been traditionally has traditionally shown sportsmanship. That's the best way I can see it, and I don't want to lose that part of the game. But I do agree with you to an extent that they need to make the game more entertaining. I do think they need to change the pace of the play because I'm not going to lie, sometimes the game is slow. Okay, like in the playoffs, the game started at, I believe, 6:30. I was watching the Giants and the Cubs in the NLDS. The game didn't end till like 11:30, and I had to wake up early the next day. So that's something that I do think they can change. Even though the game went to extras, I think they can find a way to shorten the game. They may lose some advertisers in that. They may have few commercial breaks, but I do think that's something they should do. But when you talk about actually fighting on the baseball diamond, I don't like it because, I just don't think you can fight in any type of sport, especially when kids watching. Baseball is one of those sports when a lot of little leaguers, a lot of little kids will get into when they're very young, especially, Little League is huge. I don't think that's a bad example for, for a younger generation to watch. I just don't think that's something that should be, highly regarded good for baseball.
I just think that the Major League Baseball can take a lot from the success of the WBC because it exceeded everybody's expectations.
No, it did, and I do think they need to take some notes for this because the World Baseball Classic was very entertaining. I admit it was probably the best one I've ever seen.
Right, and I feel like Major League Baseball can take some of the success from that and try to develop it into their own game. A lot of it I didn't agree with, like the extra inning rule where you have runners on first and second already with no outs. Like, I'm not too big on that.
That part I didn't like.
But like the whole fun and excitement of it, I think was so much. It was so good for the game, and I would love to see it develop into the majors. But that is left to be seen.
That's left to be seen. I think we might be looking at that like 20 years down the road because baseball.
Right, all these older generation guys will have to die out.
It's always one of the slowly developing games. They always, it's always been that way. But yeah, it was the second highest rated game for a reason. All right, well, we're going to take our last break in. When we get back, Ben and I are going to discuss probably some of our wild card favorites. Our World Series picks. MVP favorites, Cy Young favorites. We're going to discuss everything.
And we have a special announcement at the end.
Okay.
For a new segment we're starting come the season starting, which is next week.
Exactly. So Ben will discuss what that segment is. So don't go anywhere, guys. We got a whole nother segment for you guys left to go at the Going to Meet Concepts Baseball Podcast.
Are you looking for help for your fantasy football team? Check out the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast. Get today's best advice on who to start, who to sit, even who you should draft. From sleeper picks to red-hot lineups, they got it all covered for you. That's gsmcpodcast.com/fantasy-football-podcast. We'll cover traditional leagues, dynasty, PPR, even IDP leagues. When you need fantasy help, there's just one show to hit up. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit gsmcpodcast.com for more info.
And welcome back to the Golden State Meet Concepts Baseball Podcast. And for the final segment today, we're just, how long has it been? 4 days away from the baseball season opening?
April 2nd, on my birthday.
All right.
On WrestleMania.
Yes.
Actually, I'm kind of surprised because we're not just going to have the lone Sunday night, standalone game. There's games there's a triple header.
Yeah, there's a triple header on ESPN. And
so it's good. And then Monday is, of course, when everyone else gets started. So it'll be fun.
Yeah, so Sunday is a day that has been penciled in on a lot of baseball fans' calendars. Me, I am really excited. The NFL is gone. I'm a huge NFL fan. But, I'm a huge baseball fan, too, and I'm excited. And we wanted to discuss our favorites to win MVP, Cy Young, Rookie of the Year, and possibly our wild card favorites. So we pretty much picked the division winners in every division preview. So, for example, I picked the Boston Red Sox.
As did I.
And, we picked the Chicago Cubs to win the Central again. We picked the Indians to win the Central in the American League. So we pretty much picked the division winners. As for wild cards, that's a little different. I want to, or I should say breakout teams. I think breakout teams is a better appropriate thing to talk about because we kind of discuss our wild card teams too a little bit. I think the breakout team for me is the Colorado Rockies.
Okay, are we doing NL and AL or just one in total?
We can do one.
Okay, well, you like the Rockies. I want to say the Yankees, although they didn't have a terrible season last year. I mean, they were there for a while.
I think they kind of broke out last season.
So I'm going to say, I'll say a team that will maybe break out as far as didn't have a great season is the Astros.
Yes, okay, Astros, yeah. They did have a down year. I do see that. I think they can win the AOS. But yeah, I do like the Astros. They have a lot of talent. I think they have a Cy Young candidate, and that was Kako. They have an MVP candidate in
the best hitter in the game,
Carlos Correa,
Jose Altuve.
And Jose Altuve. But none of those guys are my favorites to win Cy Young or MVP.
All right, so let's get into that. So do we want to start with AL or NL?
We can do NL.
Okay, let's go NL.
My favorite to win the MVP in the National League, I'm going to go with Corey Seager.
Corey Seager of the Dodgers. Okay, good pick.
Remember, he was a finalist last year as a rookie.
Yes.
As a rookie.
Obviously, you still have Chris Bryant to deal with. So I'm going to stay away from the...
Yeah, I didn't want to go with
obvious
the obvious.
choice.
Yeah, Chris Bryant can easily win it again. Bryce Harper can have 50 home runs again. But I wanted to stay away from the obvious because, it's way too easy. I wanted to actually put some thought into it. And I think Corey Seager, with him, becoming a finalist as a rookie says a lot to me.
That says it does.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna go with NL. I'm gonna go with the dark horse guy as well, and it's a team you like.
Okay.
I'm gonna go with Rockies. I'm gonna go with Nolan Arenado. Already a great third baseman. Hits a lot of home runs. A Gold Glove winner, so he's a good fielder as well. If he can stay healthy, the Rockies have a better season. It's a possibility.
Yeah, and he was another guy I wanted to pick too, but I just think the Dodgers are going to be in contention and they can win the division title in the West. I think that will boost up the chances of Corey Seager. But the American League, the one player I really would love to see winning the MVP is another. I think he's in his third year. He's another shortstop. Plays for Cleveland, Francisco Lindor.
Definitely one of the more exciting players. Yes. Really broke out in the playoffs last year. So, I mean, Mike Trout's definitely still a possibility. I want to say Mookie Betts, though.
Yeah, he's another guy I wanted to go with, too, as well. Yeah,
definitely a good fielder, great speed, really a good all-around guy. And I think Boston will have a great season as well. So, I'm kind of going to be Boston favoritism because on the AL side for the Cy Young, I'm sticking with Boston as well. So I'm going to go with Mookie Betts as the MVP for me. Obviously, the easy choice is Trout, but I feel like not the Dodgers, but the Angels are going to have a down year like they did last year. And a lot of the times, with the exception of really Trout and A-Rod when he was on the Rangers, you have to pick a guy from a good team. So I'm going to go with Betts of the Red Sox.
Okay, all right. And for the Cy Young, I'm kind of going to go with the dark horse candidate for the American League. That is Aaron Sanchez of the Toronto Blue Jays. We've seen the type of year that he had in 2016. He went 15-2. 15-2. That is very hard to do in Major League. So I'm not going to say he's going to go 15-2 again. I think he can win so many more games than that. But he's definitely going to have a little bit more losses. Just losing 2 games is very hard. But with him playing behind a really good lineup, I think that's going to help his chances. I think he can kind of be like the Rick Porcello of this year, getting a lot of run support. But, I think he's going to have a very lower ERA than Rick Porcello did. So the reason that he's playing behind such a good lineup can get a lot of run support, it kind of makes me want to pick him as the Cy Young winner.
So I'm going to stick with Boston. I'm going to go Chris Sale, bro. He's already been in the American League, so it's not an adjustment there. He's going to have a ton of run support. He's finally away from Chicago where he wasn't the happiest, a la ripping up the throwback jerseys. So now he's in a new place with good people around him, good leadership. I'm going to go with Chris Sale. All
right, and in the National League, I'm probably going to go with the obvious, man. I'm going to go with Clayton Kershaw.
I mean, it's tough.
It's tough.
If he were to stay healthy last season, he would have won it. Obviously, he didn't.
I'm going to have to go with Clayton Kershaw. This guy's in the National League. It's very competitive. Max Scherzer can win one again, even though he's going to start in the season and the DL.
The NL Cy Young to predict is probably impossible because you mentioned those two. You have all the horses out in San Francisco with Bumgarner and Cueto and Samardzija. But I'm going to go with a team I really like this season. That's the Mets. I'm going with Noah Syndergaard.
That's another good pick, too. Syndergaard, the ace of probably one of the best rotations in baseball. I really do like that pick. It's going to be tough to pick it's always tough to pick the Cy Young in the NL because
you can't predict anything.
There's so much talent there,
and you can't predict anything. You can't predict injuries. They determine everything, and I realize the Mets had a lot last year, but so I'm gonna go with Noah Syndergaard. And then real quick, Jeremiah, before the show ends,
wait, hold on. I wanted to discuss the World Series picks before we get to that.
Okay, go ahead. So
my World Series pick is going to be the Chicago Cubs over the Cleveland Indians. I think we get another.
We're going to have a rematch?
I think we might have a rematch, yeah.
Oh, man.
I think these two teams are just too talented for me.
The Indians had a dream season. I don't think they'll do it again.
Yeah, but they still have talent on that team. You know, they have my MVP candidate, Francisco Lindor. They might get Michael Brantley back. I don't know if he'll play at a high level again, but having him back would give him a boost.
Well, I gave the Red Sox everything in the award, so I might as well throw them in the World Series.
I think they can too.
I'll say Boston. And God, the NL is so tough because there's so much good pitching. The Mets will have good pitching if they stay healthy. Cubs, obviously. Giants. I'm big on the Mets too. I'm gonna go with Mets.
Okay.
And I'm gonna say
that would actually be.
I'll say Boston.
That will actually be a fun matchup to watch. That would be really fun. But there's so many things that can happen. You never know. I'm just really excited for baseball season to finally be here. We've been doing this show during the offseason in December and January. Now we finally get to talk about real games. So
yes, and that leads me into what we're going to be starting next week on the show. It'll be a little premature because it's a week show, so this is a good segment to do. We're going to do one segment where we have the stud of the week, the dud of the week, and the team of the week. So the person who really had a great week is the stud of the week. The person who had a really bad week is the dud of the week. And obviously the team that had the best week is the team of the week. So we're really interested to do that.
So we're going to do that with teams playing 3 games already. So,
right. So, I mean, it'll be a little premature, like I said, the first week. But once the season rolls along, it'll be good.
Yeah, we always have really good performances opening day. So I think that's a good way to start off. But yeah, man, I'm excited. Baseball season is finally upon us, and that's all I can say.
Definitely, I'm really excited. Sunday's going to be great. 162 to go.
Yes, I know. We have a long way to go. So we're in for another season, guys. I'd like to thank you guys for tuning in. As always, I'm Jeremiah.
My name is Ben.
And this was the Golden State Media Concepts Baseball Podcast. And you guys come back next week when we talk about the opening day games and the rest of the week when we return next Wednesday. All right, guys, have a good week.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Baseball Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. From movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.